So good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for making time to our guest speaker, Amit, and then for everybody here. Today is our last course, the finale of our first launch of APRU Global Sustainability course. This particular program is launched under the auspice of the Association of Pacific Rim Universities, with students coming from different regions that are surrounding the Asia Pacific, from Singapore, from Korea, from the Americas, and Canada. So it's been a very interesting course for the last 13 weeks, and then we are very glad to have you, Amit, today to speak to our students and sharing the visions of Dell's sustainability efforts. So just a brief introduction to Amit. And Amit is a global strategic, global business leader with significant Asia experience. He has built and transformed businesses at Dell Technologies in various roles in China, US, India, and Singapore. He is well versed in multiple cultures and has established strong global relationships. He is a technologist at heart and with deep expertise in data center, enterprise software, edge, and data science. Amit has been responsible for Dell's growth in Asia Pacific and Japan region, overseeing a multi-billion-dollar business spanning 40 plus countries with a multicultural workforce. Amit is passionately focused on developing strong talent and technology leadership to support the digital transformation journey for Dell's customers and partners. He is also the president for Dell Technologies Digital Cities business globally, driving the transformation of cities and engagement with governments and corporations. He has a lot of experiences in the past from various external forums, including the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Cities and Urbanization. He's on the board of directors for various partnerships. And I thought that it is very interesting to have Amit here with us today to share with our students on how Dell actually strives to become to look at their sustainable development goal alignment internally as well as externally. Okay, so without further ado, maybe I will just mention one small thing about Amit, that I actually met him in 2020 over a forum and a panel on women in tech. So in addition to a lot of the illustrious journeys that he has, he is also a strong advocate for women in technology. So without further ado, I'll let Amit take the stage. Thank you, Amit.
Thank you, Professor Sirin, and thank you for organizing this for me to speak to the students. And good morning to all of you. I think it's great I love speaking at universities. I love creating a change of mind, even one mind at a time. But I think we're going to go into a lot of details today. So let's get through the content, and then I think we'll have some time for Q&As. So let's jump into this. So if you can move to the next slide, you will see how big an issue this has become. And someone is doing the slide. Yeah, there you go. So sustainability has become such a huge topic. So, I think 1.5 degrees, represents urgent and potentially irreversible threat to human societies and the planet. Everybody knows it. 216 million people could migrate within their own country by 2050. 85% of the world population has already been affected by human-induced climate change, and more to come. And again, this is just setting the stage in terms of urgency, and this is already happening. And what you will see is the impact and the intensity of this will only get severe. Next slide, please. So what you will see is that while on one hand that's kind of gives you the crisis, on the other hand, this is how people are responding. 46% of global consumers, especially from Gen Zs and people in developing world, are saying they want to change lifestyle a great deal to be more environmentally friendly. 39% LinkedIn reports that the share of green talent in the workforce has increased from 9.6% to 13.3%. And the growth rate is pretty dramatic. And the 77% of young people in APAC aspire to get a green job within the next 10 years, while 32.6 million green jobs are expected to be created in the next 10 years. It would not be, enough to meet the demand coming from the region's youth. So huge jobs are being created. If you move to next slide, please. Now, what will it take to fix? It's staggering amount of just to hit 1.5 degrees, we need to invest $9 trillion a year. And I think that's a massive amount of money. And that still doesn't take away the carbon that has already been emitted and is already part of the environment. On the other hand, it's a corporate issue too. Companies that are leveraging digital technologies and sustainability are 2.5 times more likely to be among tomorrow's strongest performing businesses than others. The brand preferences are such, the employability is there when you do these together, and it also requires the leadership to create the vision for companies' culture to be more in tune with where the market is as well as where things are going. And then, of course, the 100 sustainable global companies experience significantly higher mean sales growth, return on asset, and cash flow. So this is a business issue. This is a business imperative. Recently, we launched a sustainability customer advisory board here in Asia. And a lot of folks who are joining are still the CSR folks, right? They are the folks who are focused on, ensuring that the corporations check in the box. We're looking for more business leaders. And I think that's where the next session is going to take us. If it is a business imperative, if it is a business strategy, then I think business leaders need to see how to make some of these changes happen in their product, in their operations, in their culture, and really lean into this problem and go all in to solving this problem. Okay, if you move to the next slide, you will see that this is the single most important challenge that is requiring all of us to have a focus and concentrated effort, right? And again, these are a bunch of models, but I think the optimistic model suggests that we're going to hit 2 degrees Celsius increase, and 1.5, as I showed you before, kind of changes this. This is optimistic. The pledges and targets takes us 2.4 degrees higher. And then the policies are taking us to about 3. So you can see a lot of these things are pretty dismal. And while people may say they want to make the change, companies and government may say they want to change, but it is very hard to make the changes. They are expensive to make the changes. Carbon has been captured. Now the carbon moving away from carbon-based economy is a very difficult thing to do. And that's exactly what is the challenge in front of all of us, individuals, societies, countries, governments, businesses. Move to the next slide, please. Now, I thought I'll make this real for some of you. If you think about, we are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it. I think this, to me, is very apt to put the urgency behind what we need to do. We can't blame our previous generation because they didn't feel the impact. And we can't wait for the next generation to do something about it because it will be too late. So my generation, from a business leadership perspective, has to own up the problems of our economic system that is carbon based, and also set us up for a world that my my children, my grandchildren can enjoy, and so can the next generation across the world. Okay, if you move to the next slide. So how do we fit into this? And I think this is where I have set up a lot of the context about the urgency. It requires significant investment. It's a business opportunity. It's a business strategy, and it's going to create new job opportunity for many of us in this area. Now, what do we do at Dell Technologies? So who we are? We create technologies that drive human progress. That's the fundamental. That's our mission. That's going to guide us. That's our North Star. That's going to be with us for decades to come. And that has been with us for more than a decade now. So we create technologies that drive human progress. It's important to think that way because a lot of folks think about technophobia, or they think about other things, excuse me. We think that technology must be there to support and drive the human progress. That's a fundamental point to us. So that's if that's our North Star, and if we are talking about climate and sustainability as something not only disrupting human progress, but also creating existential crisis, we have to lean into that. And that's what we'll talk about, some of our journey, and then we'll talk about some of my personal messages to all of you, and then we'll take some questions. Next slide, please. So progress made real. These are our 2030 goal. Advancing sustainability is the top of the list, including inclusion in terms of societal issues, both gender diversity as well as racial diversity is a very important piece. And then also transforming lives to touch people with more than 1 billion people and helping them if there is a natural disaster or if there is something that we can provide help on. And finally, it has to be done in the context of upholding ethics and privacy to the highest level. Let's double click onto the advancing sustainability. Next slide, please. So what we have done is that we have announced that by 2030, for every product a customer buys, we will reuse or recycle an equivalent product. And 100% of packaging and 50% of our product content will be made from recycled or renewable material. And it's pretty important to think that way because that's how we can remove the electronic waste. Unless we commit to doing this, this will not be possible to really remove the e-waste. So we are leaning in and saying that's what we will be doing. If you double click more, let's go to the next slide, please. So again, I have given you the same piece that we just talked about. More than half of our product content will be made from recycled or renewable materials. I think that's what we have given. Next, please. Now, this is our journey on the sustainability side. Okay, so again, we started in 2006 with the recycling services free for consumers and businesses because they need to remove the data and confidentiality requirement. There is a service for that. We continue to make sure our products are getting more energy efficient. We continue to make sure that we can increase the temperature in which our servers can work, and that reduce the cooling requirements. We continue to make sure we take the ocean-bound plastics, and we turn that into a packaging material for some of our notebooks. And we made it the open source project, so that means other companies can join that as well. And then now 7300 in 2019 was the most sustainable laptop. I think we have now done the waterborne paint. We have now recycled windshields used in backpacks. We have renewable bioplastic, closed loop aluminum hard drives, multi-vector cooling, and coming soon, many other products that we're announcing, including our power unit equivalent that could be significantly better than what it is today. Now you may say, what is PUE? PUE is a typical metric used for a data centers. How much of energy is really going to really process the data versus cooling and other things. Even best-in-class companies are running somewhere around 1.3. And we think we have a path to getting into 1.06, 1.03, and that would be pretty amazing. That means we are running servers at the normal room temperature. We are making sure that power is most efficiently used. Data centers today are generating, a carbon footprint equivalent to an airline industry. So if we can continue to improve that kind of efficiency inside each data center, that will be a huge benefit. Okay, so if you move to the next slide, please. Now, how are we thinking about life cycle of a product? So how do we make sure we design and have the right materials in it? We build the product the right way. We ship it in such a way that is the most efficient. We use it where we can increase the energy intensity and efficiency. I gave you the PUE example, but the similar piece we are seeing in our notebooks and other products as well. And finally, how do we take the free take back and ensures that equipment is recycled in an environmentally responsible manner that is using our stringent global recycling guidelines. So that hopefully gives you a flavor of how we are thinking about it, that every step of the way we have to be sustainable. And I'll give you some more data on this, on what commitments we're making. Move to the next slide, please. So how do we I gave some examples of this before, but ultimately you can see how the plastics, the recycled, reclaimed carbon fiber, ocean-bound plastics, rare earth magnets, tree byproducts, aluminum, all of them are going into creating a product. So we are reducing the waste and also making sure that these products can also, once they're delivered to customers, they can also be recycled back, as we talked about. So again, every aspect of our product, has some componentry or something that is saving the waste, reducing the waste, and as well as saving the environment. Next, please. So what we have done so far, we have done 2 million pounds that have been diverted from landfills. We have a closed loop plastics, 125 products that are using recycled plastics. Bioplastics, 21% of laptop lids are made from bioplastics. So all of those are great. That ensures that they are not sitting here hundreds of years. They're biodegradable. And also the source is biological. If you move to next, click down, please. So e-waste is now the fastest growing waste stream in the world, right? Over 53 million tons of e-waste generated worldwide in 2019. And mind you, it has gone up exponentially since then. That's the weight, that even 2019 number is equivalent of 76,000 school buses. Yeah, that's what we are throwing in the bins every year. If the trend continues, I think by 2050, we'll generate more than 120 million tons of e-waste. And only 17% are being recycled today. And we think that 57 billion in recoverable materials are mostly dumped or burnt. So that also suggests there is actually, if you think about the resources that are limited in this earth, regardless of who's paying for it, those resources must be treasured and must be reused. And that's what we're not doing today, as you can see. So 83% are mostly dumped or burned, 17% recycled, 76,000 buses every year are kind of getting dumped. So a lot of work that industry has to do, a lot of work each one of us have to do, and the infrastructure has to kind of support a new ways of reusing and recycling the product. We in fact showcased a product just now where why does why can't we use the LCD from one notebook to the next notebook? Why can't we really create a kind of a design where we can upgrade without having to buy completely new PC, new notebook? And that's what we have already shown as a design concept just last week, 2 weeks ago in our customer event. Next, please. So, what is the commitment we're making? Enough about talking about this. Now we have to go talk about on the road to net zero. So there are 3 scopes we have committed to. So scope 1, we have said 50% of operational efficient emissions reduction by 2030. Scope 2 is 100% renewable energy use by 2040. And scope 3 is 60% reduction in supply chain emissions per unit of revenue. So that's what we have committed. We want to make sure that the product uses get efficient, product manufacturing and logistics gets efficient, and also we're giving customers path to making it carbon zero way of using our product and solutions. Next, please. So I think that was my first section, giving you more of a product view of how a product needs to be changing and should be changed from packaging, logistics, uses, design perspective, which is what I've shown you what Dell as a company is doing. Now, I wanted to share with you something about sustainable smart cities, which is how do we connect the dots? How do we make sure cities are becoming sustainable? So that perspective was, it's a crisis of mega proportions. We talked about how we as a company are approaching it more from a product perspective. And now we're switching to the second topic, which is what can a city do to become sustainable? Okay, next, please. So if you think about, the cities have always been at the forefront of defining, what the best may look like or what's possible. And I think you can see the over 100 years or 50 years in some cases, cities have transformed and really has become the thought leadership. They're the center of commerce, technology, innovation, talent, and economic growth. So if cities pledge to becoming sustainable, carbon neutral, carbon zero, I think that's going to create a significant, talent pool into those cities. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity for each city to take on. Okay, next, please. Now, if you think about climate actions, cities are leading contributor to the challenge. 55% of world global population lives in the cities, 78% of global energy consumption, and 70% of greenhouse gases emissions come from the city. 90% of urban areas are coastal prone to risk from flooding. So you can see it's going to have an impact on each and every city at the coastal level, including Singapore. 470 million are expected to live under extreme weather stress by 2030. It's not that far away. 10% loss in economic value globally by 2050. Again, that's the assumption at 2 to 2.5%, 2.5 degrees Celsius temperature increase. So they have, urban density. How do we change that? Again, how do we design where the roads are reduced, autonomous vehicles are on, and more green space can be built, right? And cities need to make sure they have ability to create infrastructure to not only innovate, but also to transform and really take citizens, with them. it's not just about something planted. It has to become grassroots. It has to be, bottoms up. More than 700 cities have already committed to climate action plans. So that's the good news. But again, as I mentioned to you before, making an announcement is easy. Making them stick, making it happen is much, much harder. The good news is urgency is increasing, and people and citizens are demanding. And I think, but these things require a tremendous amount of investments that will transform us from the fossil fuel or a carbon-based economy to a carbon neutral, carbon zero economy. Okay, next, please. So let's see some of the examples that we have seen from the cities, right? You have New York talking about, a 100% renewable. You have Amsterdam talking about fossil-free, hydrogen fuel tech powered autonomous city that near Tokyo is Woven City that is coming up. Singapore has announced 1,000 hectares of green spaces and 1 million trees by 2030 additional, right? And Dubai has announced paperless government by it says 2020, but I think they are about 3 years behind. So by 2023, I think it will be there. Now, is this enough? Can we think about zero waste? Can we think about energy efficient buildings, sustainable supply chains, autonomous mobility, circular economy, clean energy, mobility systems, green urban spaces, decarbonizing the electricity grid, sustainable agriculture, distributed renewable energy. So there is a lot to be done here. And again, we're only seeing snippets of what's possible in many of these examples. But I think, every city is going to have to execute on all of this. That's not easy. Not only takes talent, leadership, money, and also the capability and the infrastructure to help do this. So I think while 700 cities have committed to net zero, I think we have a long journey ahead to make it real. Next, please. So I think I'll skip through this in this scope of time, but the point being is, how do you go make those things real? This is the process of transformation, process of a city to become more digital, city to become more sustainable. And I think that's the process we have, but I think this itself could take a long time. Next, please. So I think the key piece I can also give examples of what would it take to include citizens engagement. How Boston has done the citizen engagement, how Buenos Aires is doing smart lighting, how India is doing digital ID program, how Dubai is doing smart Dubai. So again, a lot of these examples are the examples of what I was talking about, how cities, when they put digital technologies and sustainability together, they create a very positive effect, both from a business perspective, talent perspective, quality of living perspective, as well as creating new kind of jobs perspective. Next, please. Okay, so this is my last section. So we talked about the first global crisis, talked about how corporations need to think about it as a business opportunity. We talked about how Dell is taking it on. We talked about what is it cities have to do and how big a challenge the cities have to become carbon zero, even though 700 plus cities have announced it. But I think it's going to be quite a bit of challenge and quite a bit of journey ahead. So the last section I thought will be good, since I'm talking to many of the smartest minds. What sort of things are happening from a digital perspective? So we talked a lot about sustainability, but digital itself is creating new challenges and the opportunity. So it is one of those Beiji moments where, digital is, kind of our cities, the way technology is moving, it is creating opportunity and it is a challenge in itself. So with that, let's jump into it. I'll run through this slide very, very quickly, but I think hopefully it will give you a flavor. So the change has always been constant. I mean, you can look at this is the US data of how 1810 agriculture was 80% of the economy, and today the rest of the economy is 80%, and the manufacturing and agriculture have basically came down. And what is rest of economy? Digital media, digital banking, omni-channel e-commerce, digital health, digital telco. All of that is what's driving the rest of the economy. Next, please. So the word has, as I said, is changing and will continue to change, right? Is it helping us reimagine the economic model is going to create highly uneven growth. It's kind of the K type of recovery, I call it. The countries and the individuals and the businesses that can take on the digital technologies, they will go up in the bar, like a K bar, and others may languish or may come down. But at the same time, the society is getting polarized with everywhere with social media. I think society is definitely getting polarized. Digital natives have new expectations, and now we think that the pandemic that we just saw from a COVID perspective is not going to be the only one. We're going to have more of them, whether it's bacterial this time or another viral. We'll see, but I think the changes are happening at the societal level. So technology is positive, but also it creates uneven growth, creates polarization, and people have new expectation. But then it is also part of the solution for managing the next pandemic. Next, please. So some of the technology trends you may know, but again, a lot of things are happening around Web3, autonomous system, data economy. I talked about sustainability, robotics and metaverse, biomanufacturing, and meta-human performance. So all of that will be the key trends for us to think about and participate in. But again, if you're building your career, thinking about where to specialize, some of these are, in our minds, are pretty solid trends for decades to come, including sustainability as a business opportunity, as a career opportunity. Next, please. Now, this one, I'm still scratching my head because I think 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't been invented yet. I think that's a little bit of a hyperbole, but I would just say the 85% of the best paying jobs that'll exist in 2030 haven't been invented yet. So there will always be new kind of jobs that really will drive the aspiring talent to achieve their full potential. But one key things you need to think about is, one is change is constant. So specialization is great, but the change will continue to happen. So you're going to have to continue to deal with the change. Do you want to be manager operator, or do you want to be dreamer builder, right? That's always a question that many people ask me. Everyone needs to have a technology, then a domain expertise, right? So the domain expertise is not going away, but technology is changing the way domain expertise turns into an opportunity or creates a new kind of business model. And that's where disruptive outcomes comes in. And I think the best way to predict future, nobody knows exactly what it's going to be. The best way to predict future is to really be part of inventing it. You can't invent it as an individual because now things are getting more and more complex. But the best way to predict future is to invent it. I think that's the theme I'll leave you with. I think that was my last slide. There may be one more slide. Let me check real quick. One more down, please. And yes, so this will be my last slide, which is, despite of talking about technology, despite talking about all the things we just said, I think the mindset will still matter. And the mindset of, how do you approach problem with humility, with gratitude, with forward thinking, a growth mindset? And, how do you make sure that you are, that mindset can help us solve the bigger problems that we are all facing, whether it's sustainability, or putting technology to solve sustainability problem, or using technology to solve problems that haven't been solved before, be it diseases and other things. So ultimately, when I think about what's ahead, in many ways, we started talking about technology that drive human progress, but it's really the mindset and the people that will drive the technology that drives the sustainability and other changes that we need to make in the society. So that to me is a fundamental part of where we can listen to each other, where we can solve the problems, whether they are societal problems or technology problems or environmental problems. So I think that's where we need to go to. And I think it will require a basis of trust, openness, and being open about, learning versus being a fixed agenda. This is where you see in Zoom call, we are fixed agenda. We are locked in with something. But when you are creating a flexible agenda, you're listening and learning, that creates a lot more breakthroughs and a lot more, innovation. And I think I'll leave it with that, with this slide to say, if we are going to reimagine the world, we have to think about the growth mindset. We have to think about the trust, the openness, listening, and being flexible. I think those will be the key things that will help us drive along with technology and along with the domain expertise. So with that, I'll stop there. Hopefully, I've given you enough flavors about many things. But again, if you have any comments or questions on any of the topics, I'm very happy to cover those now. So over to you, Professor.
Thank you so much, Amit. And I think that is a really nice conclusion for the course, because in the course, we really touched on two main pillars of APRU, which is the sustainable waste management, and sustainable cities and architect and landscapes. So your talk really encapsulate both essence of this course, and really grateful for your challenge to the next generation on how today. I have been mentioning the similar things, that the next stage is theirs, and then they have to define their own path, and literally you just reiterate and then re-emphasize how important it is to craft that path to reach to invent the new workforces or jobs that is not existing yet, but then it will be required to solve the global challenge in sustainability. So thanks so much for that. With that, I open the floor for questions. I've also already seen some hands being raised. And the first one is from one of our most active students from the University of Alberta in Canada. Christopher, I saw that your hands was up. Would you like to state your questions? Yeah, and then turn on your camera perhaps, and then we can actually see you.
Yeah, my camera is on.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Midha. I think that was a thought-provoking presentation. I really appreciate it. So my question is, you mentioned that in 2019, we had 71% of e-waste recycled. And that was just 3 years ago. So it's not that far, right? And you also mentioned that Dell has been making commitments to recycling of e-waste, of the recycling of their products, which basically result in e-waste, right? So I just try to know what new, what is the new thing that Dell will do? Because 3 years, just 3 years, and we still have 17% of product recycled. So what is the new thing that Dell and other tech companies will do that will encourage people to recycle more? Because 17%, like you mentioned, is small. So what is the new thing, or what are the new things that we expect to see? Thank you.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we are holding ourselves, accountable to making sure from 2030 we have no waste. And I think that's a bold commitment in our mind. And I think we are planning on fulfilling it. Even though it is a long journey ahead, as you said, only 17% of the e-waste is being recycled today. 83% is not. And the point I'm making is that e-waste is beyond what we sell, right? But we hope that by making these announcements like we have just made, hopefully other companies will step up as well and say the same thing or similar things, whatever works in their context. But if every company, every large brand starts to do this, despite of change management that has proven hard from individual or consumer perspective, I think we'll make a long progress. I think other piece we also have to do is the design element, as I showed you before. The more recyclable material we use or recycled material we use, I think is reducing the waste in general. In our office now, we have a e-waste drop box now. I was in the inauguration of one of the responsible recycler right here in Singapore that we opened a plant along with us called Test. So if you guys ever want to organize a trip or anything else of how this finally happens, we can always showcase those to you right here in Singapore. So point being is the brands have a big role to play. And in our mind, brands need to step up and really say, this is how we will change the game. And that's what we are showcasing. And so design element is changing. Our commitments to being e-waste free, at least from our product perspective, by 2030 is a big commitment. And 3, we're continuing to build the ecosystem, whether it's a collection boxes, which we ourselves didn't have it in office, and or having the plants that can do the responsible recycling, and really reuse some of the materials. All of that is what we are being part of. And I think even the products that get returned or get renewed, we are selling them alongside of our other products as well. So our customers are looking for us to do more, and that's what we are stepping up.
Okay, thank you very much. Just one last thing, just maybe put in mind, because I've worked with e-waste before when I was in Israel, and people burn this waste because they make money out of it. So just put that in mind, that people are actually seeing it as an economic return. They burn the e-waste, take the precious metals, and pollute the environment, not caring what happens. So put that in mind for your company.
Yeah,
thank you.
And that's exactly right. That's why I said responsible recycling, right? Because if we start to just burn the motherboard to extract any of the metal, that absolutely is going to destroy the environment. But there are ways to really recycle this. And there is, if you want to know more about it, there is a R2 certification, responsible recycling, among others. That ensures that the process is followed appropriately. There are checks and balances. And when we do recycling, we do go through the right certification and right process, just like we do our, product production side.
Okay, thank you, Amit. I have a couple more questions from the students. The next one comes from Adri at NTU. Adri, would you like to state your questions?
Yep, sure. Thanks so much for the presentation, Mr. Midha. So I have one question. As you mentioned, net zero is one of the key challenges now, and most companies are moving towards it. And one big part of it is to use renewable energy. So at this point, I guess that I was thinking that the demand will be expected to outpace the supply quite rapidly, resulting in a shortage and quite a premium for renewable energies that big companies can just buy, but maybe smaller companies can't. So maybe to ask a question, apart from governments, right, that can actually regulate this, do you think large companies such as Dell, like you mentioned, the branding of it is quite important? Do they have a responsibility to contribute towards this development of renewable energy production so that in general, overall, the world can work towards net zero at a much without being excluded, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what we talked about, our scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 commitment, right? Which is how well can we go towards renewable energy sources. We also talked about how we are helping from a technology perspective. Each digital city can become more sustainable. And I think we have the design around that too. Are we going to go and build a renewable power plant ourselves? Probably not. I think that model of a centralized production and distribution is probably over. What we need is a much more decentralized power production, which is more efficient, connected with smart grid, and that's what we can provide, which is also which is also part of the digital cities solution we have. So these are the things that we will be part of. We will make sure our entire operations is carbon neutral. We'll ensure that we give customers choice. In the past, we used to have a program called, plant a tree. So every time you buy something, you can contribute $1 or $2 to plant 2 trees in your name, right? Then larger companies came to us and said, hey, plant a forest for me, right? So these are all carbon sequestering methods. I mean, best way to sequester carbon from the environment is to plant more trees, right? That's just the fundamental aspect of it. But to decarbonize the energy sources, the market force is already there. Governments are incentivizing it. We all have to play a part. I mean, even in a place like Singapore, where you have plenty of sunshine throughout the year, every building facade can be used to create more renewable sources. I know on top of all HDBs now, we have the solar panels, and that's driving significant amount of energy for use in these housing estates. You may have read that the California now, for the first time, was carbon neutral. That means they were generating enough from the renewable sources that they didn't have to use any fossil fuel for a very short period of time, right? But again, that shows a vision of what's possible. So there's a lot of market forces in play already. We have to continue to incentivize and make sure we are running business properly, but also working with the customers to facilitate the ecosystem around that. And I think we're committed to doing that. Just like I talked about around the forest side, we will come back with a program around renewable energy side. But in the meantime, we will make sure materials are recycled. We'll make sure that energy efficiency is high, and we'll make sure the operating temperature in which the products work, they don't require specialized room or cooling or anything else of that sort.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Adri, and thank you, Amit. Next question comes from Jane Seng from Korea University. Jane?
Okay, yeah, thank you. I just would like to know that how does Dell actually balance between profit and sustainability? We've seen like every time as a tech company, every time that the company releases like a new product, like a laptop, you of course want like your consumer to buy it because that's where your profits come. But at the same time, I feel like this can create like a consumerism culture so that consumers are constantly chasing after new products, and that is actually pretty unsustainable. So I would just like to know how does Dell balances between chasing after profits and at the same time not creating a consumerism culture. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I talked about the Project Luna, right, which is basically suggests that you don't have to buy everything brand new if you want to upgrade. It's a modular design where you can have, you don't have to discard the whole product if there's a malfunction in something or you want to upgrade something. So that's the concept design that shows that we have to be more responsible. That said, I think fundamentally what we believe is technology is becoming 10x more powerful every 5 years. It's just a Moore's law, nothing more than that. So 10x every 5 years. That means if you think about next 15 years, we're going to have 1,000x more powerful technology from a semiconductor driven, whether it comes in the form of PC or comes in the form of data centers or others. So that's a lot of changes that are coming. Imagine the problems we can't solve today, be it autonomous systems and otherwise, or zero trust society, which is around Web 3.0. All of those things will be very feasible in very near future because for the same price, you're going to get 1000x more. Now, the problem is, so there will be new use cases that we haven't even seen. There will be a lot more coming, and there will be a demand for those products, and there will be requirements for those products, because that's how we'll solve some of these challenges that are ahead of us. But the challenge is also that how do we make sure this doesn't create the carbon footprint that it is creating today? Also, it doesn't create the waste that it is creating today. So if you ask me today, will we say, well, you should not buy new technology, even though with the new technology you can do some amazing things that you can't do with the old? I don't think that's possible. What we have to do is we have to continue to move on the path of technology-driven innovation and transformation, but we have to make sure there's no negative effect from that, which comes from the e-waste as well as from the carbon footprint side. So both of those we're committed to, as I mentioned before. So it's not as much about consumerism. Consumer is a very small business for us. I think you may know Dell today is from edge to core to the cloud, from cybersecurity and data management and AI and everything else, multi-cloud. So our consumer business is rather small. It's really the B2B businesses side that we really help build and transform. So I would say that, as other corporations start to think about sustainability as a top challenge, I think we can join forces with our customers and really make something amazing possible here. So I hope that answers your question. But the net of the answer is we have to take the advantages of take advantage of the technology curve that we are on, but we have to remove or reduce any of the negatives that comes with it.
Okay, so just a nice segue for the next question from Ahmed. Ahmed, are you here? Okay, so he's actually from the UK, and he just wanted to ask one question here. Can e-waste be effectively managed in the future? We have a lot of plans, and then what is your vision in terms of the effectiveness of managing this e-waste? Can we?
Yeah. So listen, I think there should not be any greenwashing. Let's start with that, right? This is the first and fundamental principle. And that's why I think companies like ourselves take this matter seriously. We put all the data every year to showcase what is being done. We have a process in place. We have certifications in place. We hold ourselves accountable to that, just like we do from a product quality perspective, from a product design perspective. Sustainability is becoming just equivalent as big a topic. If you can see that, recently now we are designing servers. Today, servers used to run in a cool data center around 18 degrees or so. Now we're expanding temperature to run anywhere from -10 to up to +40, +50, +60 degrees Celsius. That means they can literally run in ambient air, right? So design has a big element of this, and we're committed to making sure that the footprint reduces. But the recycling part, which was the question, I'm confident that we will ensure that recycling is done to its intended view. Today we do this already, but to be able to do at this scale, I think we have to improve on the infrastructure, which is what I mentioned. So I think in next 6-7 years, I think we have a lot of work to do to work with the ecosystem partners to make it possible. But I'm confident that recycling will serve its intended purpose. It is serving, but on a smaller scale. We have a long way to go to build the entire scale.
Okay. Thanks for the positive outlook on this matter. We have more questions from students are very active now. Wei Han too from NTU. Would you like to state your questions, Wei Han?
Hi. My question is mainly based on what I have been exposed to through this course. I've realized that most companies actually reported that climate action with the baseline from 2017 to 2019, which I believe Dell does as well. So my question is, do you think that the climate footprint before this time frame should be accounted for a more accurate description of the company's efforts towards sustainability versus their growth?
Yeah, listen, I have thought about this issue quite a bit, which is, do we have think about it, today, ESG is a big theme of investment, right? But then we hear all sorts of fraud. This land is getting carbon credit, but they also got incentive from somewhere else. So just like any other new industry, while the rules are not defined or established, all of these things kind of happen where people take opportunistic view and they take advantage of it. My view is that we just have to expect that, right? There will be unscrupulous folks in this, but ultimately, as larger brands like ourselves get involved in creating a systematic definition of what do you call carbon zero, how do you measure it, how do you certify it, how do you do an audit of it, just like we do anything else. I mean, that's what is going to be required to make sure this is real. And I think a lot of this is getting defined. I think you will see, I've seen a lot of software is now being available for large companies to measure and manage their carbon footprint and be able to have the AI run on top of it to say what can be done to reduce the footprint from A to B. So there's a lot of things that is coming online. I can't speak on the S&G side in ESG, but on the environmental side, I think the checklist is a lot more real. And I believe that we will see a lot bigger progress there.
Okay. We haven't gotten new questions yet, so I'm going to just ask you just to follow up on the previous question. This effort is very expensive. So we have heard some lectures on financing sustainability. So I'm curious about how Dell looks at their ledgers and then kind of make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not that there is a lack of money. I think there's global economy is tremendous. I mean, 100 trillion or so. Debt market is tremendous, huge, hundreds of trillion. Currency market is tremendous. So it's not that there's no lack of availability. I think the economic model and the business model is the issue. And that's where the leadership comes in as well. How do we define an economic model driven by new projects? And how do we define a leadership framework where people feel it's not greenwashing and it is real and it is economic sustainable? In many countries, especially from India, I heard that now the solar cost per kilowatt hour is now lower than coal. And that just is based on the market pricing. If you look at the total environmental cost, it may be much, much lower. So the market forces are at work today. So I think this let's not think that the market forces. There is a strong desire on the consumer part and the societal citizens' part to really be part of the solution. Some of the brands who can say I am carbon neutral, they can command up to 10 to 15% higher price, because the people want to be part of this solution. So I think we all are gonna go pursue the goals that I talked about, which is becoming carbon zero, becoming e-waste zero. We're gonna make sure that all of our energy comes from sustainable sources. And then we're gonna have to go and think about how to sequester all the carbon we've already emitted in the history of the company. That's, I think, will be the next set of things everyone will have to think about. So financing wise, I would say the government, the pension funds, the family offices, even large banks, they have to declare. So I would say keep the pressure on the organizations, right, in whichever way, because that's how the accountability will come. Some people right now are talking about, hey, the gasoline pricing is high because all the investment went into renewable. So we're kind of in that critical juncture where there's all doubts happen. Renewables hasn't taken off as much as we wanted, and fossil fuels are still required. So there's a lot of doubters in the marketplace, and I think that we should not doubt that what needs to be done, which is making a carbon zero society and keep the temperature within 2 degrees, which is looking increasingly difficult. And capital will follow what the opportunity is. Now, what this would mean is that if this level of investment is required to make carbon zero economy, does that mean a more sustained inflation, right? Because now things are more expensive, right? Because whoever is providing this capital is going to expect some return, right? And so unless governments step in and provide a more cheaper source of funding, becoming carbon zero, if it is not done with the right business model and with the right economic model, could actually increase the inflation. And I think not, because as soon as you digitize things, as soon as you make more software-like things, the price of everything reduces, and the demand goes up as well. So I am confident that as we move towards a carbon zero society, it's going to lead to more abundance. It's going to lead to things being more cheaply available, and it's going to lead to a better quality of living and better jobs.
Thank you, Amit. That's you just basically explained to us the G part of the ESG, how important it is to actually drive everything else. So thanks for that. And I think I know that you have to go in like 15 minutes or so, and I would like to just maybe invite some of our colleagues from APRU to, if they have particular questions that they would like to clarify. Christina has some comment. So Christina is our program manager and then I think she's also the high level administrator at the APRU, director of education, I think. So thank you, Christina, for having very supportive throughout the program. So I'll let you ask the questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Siren, and thank you, Amit, for a really good presentation. And actually, I would like to ask this question, not in my role at APRU as supporting the development of all of these programs, but actually as a master's student on sustainable development myself at the moment. And I'm just doing the energy module of my course. And I know from this specifically that, as you mentioned, you talked about cities, which is amazing, and I think it's great. But cities are also one of the key drivers of carbon emissions, and also the developing regions in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa are the areas where we will have most urban growth in the future. But they also have the least capacity to go towards carbon zero and actually achieve those aims of reducing emissions drastically. And do you have any thoughts how this can be addressed, or what can be done maybe as an international organization such as DEL yourself, or as a community collective approach? Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think, as I mentioned, 700 cities cover 73% of the current emissions. So, but to your point, there's the new sources of emission. That is, why can't we start the right way there? And I agree with that. But at the same time, the productivity is so low and the capital availability is so low. It's a lot more tends to be, fossil fuel based, right? Either wood or the coal or even petroleum. So I think it's a big concern. But here's how I would think about it. So first and foremost, economic model have to be defined. So as I mentioned to you, in India, several large solar plants are operating more efficiently than coal. Okay, so that's an economic model. That model could apply to anywhere in Africa too. Africa has plenty of sunshine, there's plenty of land, why can't that be harnessed, right? Even if it is not harnessed by local communities, can there be consortium? Can there be World Bank funding to really provide a switchover to or start the right way from a carbon zero perspective? So that's, I think, is a point one. So economic model is very important for new sources of energy. The second piece is, I think for Africa and other new urban development centers, they have to have a North Star. They have to see another city, just like we talked about the Neom or the Woven city in Tokyo. They're building from grounds up as carbon zero. So there is not even this is a design principle. They're not starting and saying, hey, how do I build a city and then I'll think about carbon zero? They're saying, no, the carbon zero and digital is a design principle from day one. Now, those are expensive cities to build, right? Though, at least at the moment right now. But at least once we get the North Star ready, which will be within 12 to 18 months for both of these cities, then I think we'll be able to say, how do we commoditize some of these technologies? And how do we ensure that there is an emerging market or there is a frontier market model for this carbon zero cities? But at least starting from a 73% of the emissions today, I think that's a good start. But I don't think we have a fully flushed out model, as I mentioned, for every city, every brownfield city, in the sense the city that has already been in existence. I mean, I'm coming from a city just this morning, just landed, which has been hundreds of years. So, for them to turn over, it's a much, much harder task than a greenfield city. But I give you an example of this. The new technologies put to use right can reduce the operating cost as much as 30 to 40% inside a city. That's massive. And I think that's the economic model that cities are looking for. They're also looking for being the hotbed for innovation, right? How everyone can support autonomous vehicles, right? And how to police an autonomous vehicle, how to ensure that the traffic lighting is working appropriately, or how to increase the speed, how to reduce the road space, and increase more for green. I mean, once these things start to snowball, I think they're going to get bigger and bigger. And I think that's the opportunity we're going to see in the coming times. But to your question, I think I hope that we can take some of the emerging market models like from India and plant them in Africa. But I think a fully carbon zero model, we're going to see a North Star within the next couple of years.
Fantastic wrap for the question and answer session. Thank you so much, Mr. Midha. I think we should, he has to drop off, so let's give him a big round of applause for his time and his really thought-provoking discussions today. And so thank you again, Amit, and we hope that we will see you again in our next sessions in the future. So
I wish you all well, and thank you very much for having me again. And we still owe you a response back, which we will do so. Thank you very much again. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.